I woke up from heart surgery to discover my family had spent $19,000 of my money in Las Vegas. But what they didn't know was that from my hospital bed, with one phone call, I was about to change everything and teach them a lesson they will never forget. Let me tell you exactly how it happened. Picture this. I'm lying in a recovery room at Tampa General Hospital, still groggy from anesthesia, with tubes coming out of my chest and machines beeping around me. The first thing I noticed wasn't the pain from my surgery. It wasn't even the fact that I was completely alone, despite my family promising they'd be there when I woke up. No, the first thing that caught my attention was my phone buzzing with text alerts, bank notifications, credit card warnings, one after another, after another. I reached for my phone with shaking hands, still weak from the procedure, and what I saw made my heart race faster than any cardiac monitor ever could. $19,000 in charges, all from Las Vegas, all while I was unconscious, fighting for my life on an operating table. But here's what my family didn't know about their dear old mom, the woman they thought was just a helpless burden they had to take care of. What they didn't realize was that I had been choosing to support them financially, choosing to pay their mortgages, their car payments, their comfortable lifestyles. And I could choose to stop. As I lay there in that hospital bed staring at those charges, something inside me shifted. The woman who had spent 45 years as a nurse, taking care of everyone else, was about to learn how to take care of herself. That phone call I made to the bank fraud department wasn't just about canceling credit cards, it was about canceling my role as the family ATM. And when my children tried to check out of their fancy Vegas hotel the next morning, when their cards got declined in front of a lobby full of people, that was just the beginning. Because you see, what happened next didn't just embarrass them. It taught them some hard lessons about respect and consequences. And every single thing they faced, they brought on themselves the moment they decided to party in Vegas while their mother was fighting for her life. Wait until you hear what happened when they realized exactly how much power their helpless old mother actually had. Before we continue, please subscribe for more stories like mine, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. My name is Margaret Sullivan. I'm 72 years old, and I live in Tampa, Florida. For 45 years, I worked as a registered nurse at Tampa General Hospital, the same hospital where I would later discover my family's betrayal. I started there right out of nursing school in 1978, working the night shift in the cardiac unit, and I didn't retire until I was 68. You have to understand, nursing wasn't just my job, it was my calling. I spent nearly 5 decades taking care of other people's families, staying late when patients needed extra comfort, covering shifts when colleagues had emergencies. I saved every penny I could, living modestly in a small apartment near the hospital, driving the same Honda Civic for 15 years, never taking fancy vacations or buying expensive things for myself. When my husband Tom passed away 3 years ago from cancer, I thought my caregiving days were over. Tom had been the love of my life for 43 years, and we built a comfortable retirement together. Between my pension, Social Security, and the money we'd saved, I had about $380,000 in retirement accounts. Plus, I owned our house outright, worth about $420,000. We'd been careful, responsible people who planned for our future. But after Tom's funeral, something changed with my children. My daughter Linda and my son Bobby, who had been independent adults with their own lives, suddenly started having emergencies. Linda, who's 48 and works as a real estate agent here in Tampa, came to me 6 months after her father's death. She was crying, saying the real estate market was slow and she couldn't make her mortgage payment, $2,800 a month for a house in a nice school district, so her teenagers could get a good education. "Mom," she said, sitting at my kitchen table with tears in her eyes, "I just need help for a few months until my commissions pick up. You know how much Dad wanted the grandkids to succeed." How could I say no to that? I started covering Linda's mortgage payment every month. Then Bobby, my 45-year-old son, who works construction when he can find steady work, showed up at my door 2 months later. He'd just gone through a messy divorce and was behind on everything: his car payment, his rent, his child support for my other grandchildren. "Ma, I'm drowning here," he said, looking so much like his father when he was worried. I just need $18.50 a month to get back on my feet. $650 for the car, $1,200 for rent. I'll pay you back when this job comes through. So I started covering Bobby's expenses too. Here's the thing though. And this is important. I wasn't struggling to help them. I had a monthly income of $5,000 between my pension and Social Security. After paying for my own modest lifestyle, I could afford to help my children without hurting myself financially. The problem wasn't the money. The problem was what came next. You see, when you start helping your adult children financially, something shifts in the relationship. They stopped calling just to check on me. Instead, the phone calls became about money, about problems they needed me to solve, about emergencies that always seemed to require exactly the amount I could comfortably give. And somewhere along the way, they stopped being grateful. The help I was providing went from being a generous gift from their mother to being something they expected, something they felt entitled to. Linda would say things like, "Mom, you're just sitting on all that money Dad left you. At least this way, it's helping your grandchildren get a good education." Bobby would add, "Ma, you don't need much at your age. We're the ones with real expenses, real responsibilities." The final step in this progression was when they convinced me to give them emergency access to my credit cards. "Mom, what if something happens to you and we need to handle things?" Linda had said just 3 months ago. "What if you're in the hospital and we need to pay for something urgent?" "We just want to take care of you the way you've taken care of us," Bobby added. So I gave them both access to my credit cards. For emergencies only, we agreed. For situations where they might need to help me if I couldn't help myself. Looking back now, I can see how perfectly they set that up, how they conditioned me, over those 3 years since Tom's death, to see their financial dependence on me as normal, to see my money as family money, to see their access to my accounts as them taking care of me. But what they never understood, what they never even thought to ask, was whether I was choosing to help them or whether I had to help them. They assumed I needed them. They assumed my generosity came from loneliness, from desperation to keep them close, from having no other options at my age. They never considered that I was strong enough, secure enough, and independent enough to choose differently. That assumption was about to cost them everything they'd gotten used to depending on. Once my children got comfortable with my financial support, the requests started coming more frequently, and with less gratitude. It started with Linda calling me one Thursday evening, not even bothering with small talk. "Mom, Madison needs a laptop for her AP classes. The school recommends this specific model that costs $800. Can you handle that?" When I hesitated, not because I couldn't afford it, but because I wanted to understand why this was suddenly urgent, Linda's tone changed completely. "Seriously, Mom? You're going to make your granddaughter suffer because you're being stingy? Dad would be ashamed of you right now." That comment about Tom cut deep. But I transferred the money anyway. Bobby's demands became more frequent too. First it was an extra $200 for work clothes that he needed for a new construction job. Then it was $500 to fix his truck, so he could get to work. Then it was $300 to catch up on child support so he wouldn't get arrested. But the real problem wasn't the money. The real problem was how they started treating me when I wasn't useful to them. Take Linda's daughter, Madison's sweet 16th birthday party last year. Linda planned this elaborate celebration at a country club here in Tampa. She called me 3 weeks before the party. "Mom, Madison's party is going to cost $4,500. Can you cover it? This is a once-in-a-lifetime event for your granddaughter." I said yes. Of course. I transferred the money that same day. But when I showed up to the party, dressed in my nicest outfit, carrying a beautiful gift I'd picked out specially for Madison, Linda pulled me aside. "Mom, I'm really sorry, but we ended up with exactly the right number of seats. There's not really room for you at the main tables. Maybe you could just drop off your gift and head home? The party's going to go pretty late anyway, and you know how loud these teenage celebrations get." I was being dismissed from my own granddaughter's birthday party. A party I had paid for completely. I handed Madison her gift, gave her a hug, and left. The hurt I felt driving home that night was deeper than any physical pain I'd experienced. But it got worse. Bobby's behavior was even more shocking. Last Christmas he called me 2 days before the holiday. Ma, I know you usually host Christmas dinner, but Tiffany's family wants to do something at their place this year. It's gonna be more convenient for everyone. You understand, right? Tiffany was his new girlfriend, a woman 30 years younger than him, who worked at a nail salon. I had never even met her family. What about our family traditions? I asked. I've been cooking Christmas dinner for decades. Look, Ma, times change. We can't always do things the old way just because that's how you want them. Besides, you'll probably be tired anyway. This takes the pressure off you. So I spent Christmas alone in my apartment, eating a frozen dinner while looking at the Christmas tree I'd already decorated, thinking about how Bobby's car payment and rent had both come out of my account just 3 days earlier. But the most painful incident happened just 2 months ago. At Bobby's daughter's high school graduation, my granddaughter Jessica was graduating with honors, and I was so proud of her. I bought a beautiful jewelry set as a graduation gift and drove to the ceremony early to get a good seat. When Bobby saw me, he looked annoyed. Ma, what are you doing here? It's Jessica's graduation, I said, confused. Of course I'm here. Look, Tiffany's whole family is here, and we've got the seating all planned out. There's not really space for you. This is kind of a young family event, you know? Maybe you could just give Jessica her gift later? I was being asked to leave my own granddaughter's graduation. After I'd been paying Bobby's expenses for 3 years, after I'd helped pay for Jessica's graduation party, after I'd been there for every important moment of this child's life. But here's what really showed me how they truly felt about me. Last month, I overheard a phone conversation between Linda and Bobby. I had called Linda to ask about bringing a dish to a family barbecue, and she didn't realize I was still on the line when Bobby came over to her house. "Is that Mom again?" Bobby said. And I could hear the irritation in his voice. "Yeah, she wants to bring something to the barbecue. I don't know why she can't just understand that she doesn't fit in with our friends," Linda replied. "I know, right? It's embarrassing having her around. She's so old-fashioned and out of touch. She makes everyone uncomfortable," Bobby said. "The worst part is she acts like we owe her something just because she helps us out financially. Like, hello? We're her children. She's supposed to help us. That's what parents do," Linda added. "Exactly. And honestly, at her age, what else is she going to spend the money on? At least this way, it's going towards something useful, like the grandkids' futures," Bobby said. "Sometimes I wish she would just, get sick or something. Then we could handle her finances properly and not have to deal with all her guilt trips," Linda said. My heart stopped. My own daughter was wishing I would get sick so they could control my money without having to pretend to care about me. Bobby laughed. "Don't worry, at her age, something's bound to happen soon. And when it does, we'll finally be able to live the way we deserve to live." I hung up the phone quietly, my hands shaking. These weren't isolated cruel comments. This was how my children really felt about me. I was nothing more than a source of money to them, and they were literally waiting for me to die so they could inherit what I'd worked my entire life to build. The saddest part was that I had been choosing to support them out of love. I wanted to help my children, to make their lives easier, to give my grandchildren opportunities, but they had turned my generosity into their entitlement. They had taken my love and twisted it into an obligation. And now, they weren't even pretending to be grateful anymore. They were actively wishing for my death, while living off my sacrifices. What they didn't know was that their wish was about to come true in a way. Because the mother they had taken advantage of for 3 years was about to disappear forever. Not because I was dying, but because I was finally waking up. 3 weeks after I overheard that terrible conversation, I started having chest pains. At first, I thought it was just stress from what I'd learned about my children's true feelings. But when the pain got worse and started radiating down my left arm, my nursing training kicked in. I knew I needed to see a cardiologist immediately. The tests showed I needed cardiac surgery, a triple bypass. The doctor explained that one of my main arteries was 90% blocked and 2 others were severely narrowed. Without surgery, I could have a massive heart attack at any time. "Mrs. Sullivan, This is serious. Dr. Rodriguez told me in his office at Tampa General. We need to schedule this surgery within the next 2 weeks. You'll need someone to drive you home afterward and help you for the first few days of recovery. I called Linda first. Honey, I need to tell you something important. I'm having heart surgery next Friday. There was a pause. Then, oh, wow. Is it serious? The doctor says it is. I'll need someone to pick me up after surgery and help me for a few days. Mom, you know I would. But the kids have school, and I've got 3 house showings next week. Can't you hire someone? You can afford it. I called Bobby next. Son, I'm having heart surgery on Friday. I was hoping you could be there. Heart surgery? Geez, Ma, that sounds scary. But I just started this new construction job, and I can't miss days right at the beginning. They'll fire me. You understand, right? Neither of my children offered to be there for my surgery. The surgery that could determine whether I lived or died. But then, something strange happened. 3 days before my surgery, both Linda and Bobby suddenly became very concerned about my well-being. Linda called Tuesday evening. Mom, I've been thinking about your surgery and I'm worried about you being alone. What if something happens and you need us to handle things? Do you have all your important papers organized? Bobby called Wednesday morning. Ma, I was talking to Linda, and we realized we should probably have access to your accounts, just in case something goes wrong during surgery. You know, so we can pay your bills and handle emergencies. You already have access to my credit cards, I reminded them. Yeah, but what about your bank accounts? What if the hospital needs payment information? What if there are complications? Linda pressed. I was touched that they seemed concerned. Maybe they did care about me after all. Maybe I had misunderstood that conversation I'd overheard. So I gave them my banking information, just in case of emergencies during my surgery. On Thursday night, the evening before my surgery, both my children came to visit me. I was so relieved. They brought flowers and stayed for an hour, talking about how everything would be fine and how they'd visit me in the hospital. We love you, Mom, Linda said, hugging me goodbye. We'll be thinking about you tomorrow. Don't worry about anything, Ma, Bobby added. Just focus on getting better. Friday morning, I checked into Tampa General at 6 a.m. for my 7:30 surgery. The nurse asked, "Who should we call when you're out of surgery?" "My daughter Linda and my son Bobby," I said, giving them both phone numbers. They'll want to know how it went. The surgery took 4 hours. When I woke up in the recovery room Friday afternoon, I was groggy, in pain, and connected to more machines than I could count. But I was alive. The surgery had been successful. I looked around the room, expecting to see Linda or Bobby. The recovery room was empty except for me and the nurses. "Have my children called?" I asked the nurse. "Let me check," she said, looking at her chart. "No calls for you yet, Mrs. Sullivan. But it's still early. Family sometimes needs time to get here." I waited. Friday evening came and went. No Linda, no Bobby, no phone calls. Saturday morning, I asked the nurse to try calling them. Maybe they didn't get the message that the surgery went well. Linda's phone went straight to voicemail. Bobby's did too. Saturday afternoon, I was feeling stronger and wanted some real food instead of hospital meals. I decided to order delivery from a nearby restaurant. When I tried to pay with my credit card, it was declined. That's strange, I thought. Maybe there's a problem with the restaurant's card reader. I tried calling the credit card company from my hospital phone. That's when I discovered the truth that would change everything. "Mrs. Sullivan, we've been trying to reach you," the fraud department representative said. "We're showing some very unusual activity on your account. Multiple large charges in Las Vegas, Nevada, starting yesterday morning. We've temporarily suspended the card for your protection." Las Vegas. Yesterday morning. The morning of my surgery. "Can you tell me the exact charges?" I asked, my heart racing for reasons that had nothing to do with my recent surgery. Certainly. We showed charges at several high-end restaurants in Las Vegas, cash advances from casino ATMs, shopping at luxury stores, and hotel charges at the Bellagio. The total so far is just over $19,000. My children hadn't come to my surgery because they were in Las Vegas, spending my money. While I was unconscious on an operating table fighting for my life, they were living it up in Nevada using the emergency access I had given them. But it got worse. Much worse. I asked the nurse to help me access my phone, and what I found on social media made me physically sick. Linda had posted a photo Friday morning. Surprise Vegas trip with the family. Sometimes you just need to live a little. #blessed #family time. #what goes in Vegas. The timestamp showed it was posted at 9:15 a.m., 45 minutes after my surgery had started. Bobby had posted a video Friday night of him and his girlfriend Tiffany at a casino, finally living like we deserve. Thanks to all the family support, #Vegas #living. My best life #blessed. There were more posts throughout the weekend. Expensive dinners while I ate hospital food alone. Shopping sprees while I couldn't afford to order pizza delivery. Spa treatments while I was managing surgical pain with no family support. But the post that broke my heart completely was from Linda's teenage daughter, Madison. A video of the whole family. Linda, her husband Carlos, Bobby, Tiffany, and both teenagers, toasting with champagne glasses in what looked like an expensive restaurant. "Cheers to Grandma," Madison said in the video, raising her glass. "Thanks for funding our epic Vegas vacation while you're sleeping off your surgery. You're the best." They were all laughing in the video. Laughing about spending my money while I was in the hospital. Laughing about how I was sleeping off major heart surgery while they partied. The final post was from Bobby on Sunday morning. "Last day in Vegas. Sad to leave paradise. But all good things must end. Back to reality tomorrow. Unless we find another emergency to extend the vacation." Sunday afternoon, I was finally feeling strong enough to call them directly. I wanted to understand how they could do this to me. Linda's phone went to voicemail. Bobby's went to voicemail. Then I got a text message from Linda. "Hey Mom. Hope your surgery went fine. We're having such a great family bonding time here in Vegas. Don't worry about us. We're taking good care of each other. See you when we get back." Family bonding time. They had turned my medical emergency into their family vacation. They had used the money I gave them for emergencies to fund a luxury trip while their mother recovered from life-saving surgery alone. But what they didn't know, what they had never bothered to learn, was that their emergency access to my credit cards was a privilege I had granted them, not a right they had earned. And privileges can be revoked. As I lay in that hospital bed Sunday evening, looking at their social media posts and calculating the charges on my accounts, something fundamental shifted inside me. The generous, sacrificial mother they had taken advantage of for 3 years was gone. In her place was a woman who finally understood the difference between being loving and being used. They thought they were smart, timing their Vegas trip with my surgery, so I'd be too weak and medicated to notice the charges until they got back and could explain it away somehow. They thought wrong. Because Monday morning, while they were sleeping off their hangovers in their luxury hotel suites, I was going to make some phone calls that would change their lives forever. And the best part, everything I was about to do was completely legal, completely justified, and completely within my rights as the person whose name was on every single account they'd been using. Monday morning at Tampa General Hospital changed everything. I had barely slept Sunday night. Not because of the surgical pain, but because of the rage and hurt burning in my chest. But as dawn broke through my hospital room window, the anger transformed into something much more powerful, clarity. I buzzed for the nurse around 7 a.m. "Could you please help me sit up completely? I need to make some important phone calls." "Mrs. Sullivan. Are you feeling up to that? You just had major surgery 3 days ago," she said, adjusting my bed. "I'm feeling stronger than I have in years," I replied. And I meant it. The first call I made was to the bank fraud department. The representative, a woman named Patricia, was incredibly kind and professional. "Mrs. Sullivan, we flagged your account because $19,000 in Las Vegas charges is completely outside your normal spending pattern. Can you verify whether you authorize these transactions?" "I absolutely did not authorize them," I said firmly. "My adult children used the emergency access I gave them to fund a vacation while I was having heart surgery." There was a pause. "Mrs. Sullivan, What you're describing sounds like financial elder abuse. We see this more often than you might think. Adult children who exploit their parents' trust for personal gain. Financial elder abuse. Hearing it named made everything crystal clear. What are my options? I asked. Well, first, we can immediately cancel all cards they have access to. Second, we can dispute the charges as unauthorized. Third, we can help you set up new accounts that only you control. But Mrs. Sullivan, I have to ask, do you have family support during your recovery? I thought I did, I said. But it turns out my family support was conditional on my financial support. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Mrs. Sullivan, would you like me to transfer you to our elder financial protection specialist? We have resources to help people in your situation. 20 minutes later, I was speaking with David Chen, a specialist who dealt specifically with elder financial abuse cases. His voice was calm and reassuring. Mrs. Sullivan, I've reviewed your account history. You've been supporting your adult children financially for 3 years. But everything is in your name. That's actually very good news for you, because it means you have complete control. What do you mean? I asked. I mean that every automatic payment, every transfer, every bit of access they have exists because you chose to give it to them. You can choose to revoke it just as easily. David explained something I hadn't fully understood. My children had become completely dependent on my financial support, but they had no legal right to it. Linda's mortgage was in her name, but I was making the payments by choice. Bobby's car loan was in his name, but I was covering it voluntarily. Their access to my accounts was a privilege I had granted, not a right they had earned. Let me ask you something, Mrs. Sullivan, David continued. If you stopped all financial support today, what would happen to your own lifestyle? I thought about it. Nothing would change for me. I live modestly. My pension and Social Security cover all my needs. And what would happen to your children? The reality hit me like a truck. Linda would default on her $2,800 mortgage payment. Bobby would lose his car when the $650 payment didn't go through. Neither of them had savings. Neither of them had prepared for financial independence because they'd been living off my generosity for 3 years. David, I said slowly, are you telling me that I have more power in this situation than I realized? Mrs. Sullivan, you have all the power. You always did. The question is, what do you want to do with it? While I was processing this conversation, Dr. Martinez, the hospital's social worker, knocked on my door. The nursing staff had flagged my situation because family abandonment during medical recovery is a red flag for elder abuse. Mrs. Sullivan, I understand you're here alone after major surgery, she said, settling into the chair beside my bed. I explained the situation about my children being in Vegas, about the money, about feeling completely abandoned during my medical crisis. Dr. Martinez nodded knowingly. Unfortunately, this is more common than people realize. Adult children who see their aging parents as financial resources rather than people deserving of love and respect. The thing is, I said, I don't think they even realize what they've done. They've gotten so used to my money that they think it's theirs by right. That's exactly how financial abuse often develops, Dr. Martinez explained. It starts with requests for help, then becomes expectation, then entitlement. The abusers convince themselves they deserve the money more than the elder needs it. She leaned forward. Mrs. Sullivan, can I ask you something personal? How much are you supporting them monthly? I calculated quickly. Linda's mortgage is $2,800. Bobby's car and rent total $1,850, plus miscellaneous requests that probably average another $500 a month. So about $5,100 monthly. Dr. Martinez's eyes widened. You're giving your children over $60,000 a year while they exclude you from family events and abandon you during medical emergencies. Hearing it stated so plainly made the abuse undeniable. Mrs. Sullivan, you don't owe them financial support. You don't owe them access to your accounts. You certainly don't owe them a lifestyle they can't afford on their own. Dr. Martinez arranged for me to meet with Robert Kim, an elder law attorney who did bedside consultations for patients dealing with family financial abuse. He arrived Monday afternoon with a briefcase full of documents. Mrs. Sullivan, I've reviewed the basic facts of your situation with Dr. Martinez. Before we discuss your options, I want you to understand something crucial. Everything you've done for your children has been voluntary. That means everything you're about to undo is completely legal. Robert spread several documents across my hospital bed table. Let's review what you actually control. The list was staggering. My primary residence, $420,000, owned outright. Retirement accounts, $380,000, across multiple 401k and IRA accounts. Savings account, $45,000. Life insurance policy, $250,000. Monthly income, $5,000 that I earned through 45 years of work. Your children are currently beneficiaries on your retirement accounts and life insurance, Robert explained, but you can change that at any time. What about their automatic payments? I asked. Those are voluntary transfers you set up. You can cancel them with a phone call. And their credit card access? Authorized user privileges that you can revoke immediately. Robert leaned back in his chair. Mrs. Sullivan, your children think they're going to inherit over $1 million from you eventually. But inheritance is a gift, not a right. You can leave your money to anyone you choose. Anyone? I asked. Charity, friends, other family members, your church, a scholarship fund. Inheritance is entirely at your discretion. I thought about my nephew David, Tom's sister's boy, who had called me every day since my surgery to check on me. I thought about my church friends who had offered to bring me meals when I got home. I thought about the nurses here at Tampa General, who had taken such good care of me. Robert, if I wanted to change my beneficiaries, how would I do that? I can prepare new beneficiary forms right now. We can also draft a new will if you want to make broader changes. And my children can't contest it? Not successfully. You're clearly competent. You're making these decisions without coercion. And you have valid reasons based on their treatment of you. The fact that they're currently in Las Vegas, spending your money while you recover from surgery, actually strengthens your position. Monday evening, I made my decision. I was going to stop being their victim and start being their consequence. The first call I made was back to the bank. Patricia, this is Margaret Sullivan. I want to cancel all credit cards my children have access to, effective immediately. Consider it done. Mrs. Sullivan, those cards will be deactivated within the hour. The second call was to my bank's automatic payment system. I want to cancel all recurring transfers to Linda Martinez and Robert Sullivan effective immediately. Mrs. Sullivan, I show a mortgage payment for Linda Martinez scheduled to process tomorrow for $2,800, and several payments for Robert Sullivan totaling $1,850. Should I cancel all of these? Cancel everything. No more automatic payments to anyone except my own bills. The third call was to Robert Kim. Robert, I want to change all my beneficiaries. Remove Linda and Bobby from everything. Where would you like the money to go instead? I had thought about this carefully. 50% to my nephew David Chen, who's the only family member who actually cares about me. 25% to Tampa General Hospital, where I worked for 45 years. 25% split between my church and a scholarship fund for nursing students. I'll have the paperwork ready by tomorrow morning. But the most important call I made was to Dr. Martinez. Dr. Martinez, I want to thank you for helping me understand what was happening to me, but I also want to ask about something. What resources exist for elderly people who want to build new support systems? That's a wonderful question, Mrs. Sullivan. Many of our patients find community through senior groups, church organizations, volunteer work, or neighbor networks. The best support systems are the ones built on mutual care rather than financial dependence. Tuesday morning, while my children were probably nursing hangovers in Las Vegas, I was signing documents that would secure my financial independence forever. But the beauty of what I had done was that my children wouldn't discover the changes until they tried to use what they thought was their guaranteed access to my money. Linda's mortgage payment was due Thursday. Bobby's car payment was scheduled for Friday. Their credit cards would be declined the moment they tried to check out of their hotel. They had taught me a valuable lesson in Vegas. that the people who truly care about you will be there during your hardest moments, not partying while you suffer. Now it was time for me to teach them a lesson, that financial generosity is a gift that can be withdrawn when it's taken for granted. And the most satisfying part? Everything I had done was completely within my rights, as the person who had earned every penny they'd been living off of. They had gambled with my trust and lost everything. The house always wins, and in this case, I was the house. The consequences started before my children even left Las Vegas. Tuesday afternoon, while I was signing my new beneficiary forms in my hospital bed, Linda called me for the first time since my surgery. I could hear casino noise in the background. "Hey Mom, how are you feeling? We've been so worried about you." "Have you?" I asked calmly. "Of course, we've been thinking about you constantly. Listen, we're having such a great family bonding experience here. Bobby and I have really reconnected, and the kids are having the time of their lives. You know how important family is." I almost laughed. "And how long is this family bonding experience going to last?" "Well, that's actually why I'm calling. We were thinking about extending our stay one more day. The original trip was just supposed to be through Sunday, but there's this amazing show tonight, and the kids really want to do the Grand Canyon tour tomorrow. Could you maybe help us out with the hotel for one extra night? It's only like $400. "Linda," I said quietly, "enjoy your last night in Vegas." "Aw, thanks Mom. You're the best. I'll call you when we get back." She hung up before I could explain what I meant. Wednesday morning, I got a frantic call from Bobby. Ma, there's something wrong with the credit card. I tried to pay for breakfast and it got declined. The hotel is saying all our cards are getting declined." "Are they?" I said innocently. "Yeah, and when I called the credit card company, they said the cards were canceled. There must be some mistake." "No mistake, Bobby." There was a long pause. "What do you mean? No mistake?" "I mean, I canceled them yesterday." "You canceled them? Ma, we're in Vegas. How are we supposed to get home?" "That's a good question. How are adults supposed to get home from a vacation they took without asking?" I could hear him breathing heavily. "Ma, you don't understand. We owe the hotel like $2,400 for the extra nights. If we can't pay, they're going to call the police." "Bobby, let me ask you something. Where was I on Friday when you checked into that hotel?" Another pause. You were in surgery." "That's right. I was having my chest cracked open to save my life." "And where were you?" "Ma, we can explain." "You don't need to explain anything. You've explained perfectly clearly how you feel about me. Now you get to experience how it feels to be responsible for your own problems." "Ma, please. We'll pay you back. This is an emergency." "Bobby, a heart surgery is an emergency. A vacation you can't afford is a choice." I hung up. Thursday was Linda's mortgage payment due date. She called me at 6 a.m., her voice panicked. "Mom, the mortgage payment didn't go through. My bank called and said the automatic transfer was canceled." "Yes, I canceled it on Monday." "You canceled it? Mom, what are you talking about? You can't cancel my mortgage payment." "Linda, it was never your mortgage payment. It was my gift to you, and I've decided to stop giving that gift." "Mom, you can't do this. I have kids. I have a mortgage. I'll lose my house." "Linda, you're a real estate agent. You understand how mortgages work. When you can't afford the payments, you have options. You can sell the house, you can rent it out, you can get roommates, you can move somewhere cheaper, but you'll need to figure it out without my money." This is crazy. Dad would never have wanted this. Don't you dare bring your father into this. Your father never would have left me alone during heart surgery to party in Vegas with my money. I hung up on her too. Friday morning was Bobby's car payment due date. This time, he drove to my apartment instead of calling. I was home by then, recovering nicely with help from my neighbor Mrs. Patterson, who had been bringing me meals and checking on me daily. Bobby pounded on my door at 7:30 a.m. "Ma, open up. We need to talk." I opened the door. Bobby looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot, he needed a shave, and he was wearing the same clothes I'd seen in his Vegas social media posts. "Ma? My car got repossessed. They came and took it right out of Linda's driveway. I don't have a way to get to work." "Have you considered the bus?" I asked. "The bus? Ma, I'm 45 years old. I can't take the bus to work." "Why not?" "Lots of people take the bus to work. It's reliable public transportation." "Because it's embarrassing. What will people think?" I looked at my son, this middle-aged man who was more worried about embarrassment than responsibility. "Bobby, what did you think would happen when you spent $19,000 of my money while I was in surgery?" "We were going to pay you back." "With what money? You can't even afford your car payment without my help." "Ma, you're destroying my life." "No, Bobby. I'm stopping myself from enabling your life. There's a difference." Bobby stormed off, and I watched him walk to the bus stop at the end of my street. Over the next 2 weeks, both of my children tried every manipulation tactic they'd ever used on me. First came the guilt trips. Linda called crying about how the grandchildren would suffer if she lost the house. Bobby showed up with pictures of the apartment he'd have to move to if I didn't help him. Then came the anger. Linda screamed at me over the phone about how I was a selfish old woman who was destroying the family. Bobby accused me of having a mental breakdown from my surgery. Then came the bargaining. They both promised to pay me back, to visit more often, to include me in family events if I'd just restore their financial support. Finally came the threats. Linda said she'd contest any changes to my will. Bobby said he'd tell the grandchildren that I chose money over family. Through it all, I remained calm. Because I had learned something important. Their desperation proved how much power I'd actually had all along. Linda did lose her house. After 3 months of missed payments, the bank foreclosed. She and her family had to move into a small apartment across town. Her teenagers had to change schools. Bobby did lose his independence. He had to move in with his girlfriend Tiffany, sleeping on her couch and borrowing her car to get to work. His pride took a massive hit. But here's what surprised me. As my children's lives became more difficult, mine became more peaceful. Without the constant financial stress of supporting 2 adult families, I had money for things I'd forgotten I enjoyed. I joined a senior travel group and took my first vacation in 5 years. I hired a housekeeping service so I could focus on my recovery instead of chores. Most importantly, I built real relationships with people who cared about me as a person, not as a bank account. Mrs. Patterson and I became close friends. She was 78 and had been widowed for 6 years. We started having dinner together twice a week and checking on each other daily. My church friends rallied around me during my recovery. Pastor Williams and his wife brought me groceries. The ladies' circle organized meal deliveries. When I told them what had happened with my children, they were supportive and understanding. My nephew David became like the son I'd always wanted. He visited every weekend, helped with home repairs, and called just to chat. When I changed my will to make him my primary beneficiary, he was overwhelmed. "Aunt Margaret, I don't need your money. I just want you to be happy and healthy." "David, that's exactly why you're getting it." 6 months after my surgery, Linda made one final attempt at reconciliation. She came to my apartment with my granddaughter Madison. "Mom," Linda said, standing in my doorway, "Madison has something she wants to say to you." Madison, now 17, looked embarrassed and uncomfortable. "Grandma, Mom says I should apologize for the Vegas thing. I didn't know it would hurt you so much." I looked at this young woman I'd helped support for years, being used as a pawn in her mother's manipulation. "Madison, sweetheart, you don't owe me an apology. You were following your mother's lead, but let me ask you something. When you posted that video in Vegas, toasting to me while I was in the hospital, how did you think that would make me feel?" Madison looked down. I didn't really think about it." "That's the problem, sweetheart. Your mother taught you that my feelings don't matter as long as my money keeps coming. But people who love you don't celebrate your suffering." Linda stepped forward angrily. "Mom, that's enough. You're confusing her." "No, Linda. I'm educating her. I'm teaching her that love and money are 2 different things, something you never learned." Linda grabbed Madison's arm. "Come on, Madison. Grandma has clearly chosen money over family. As they walked away, I realized that Linda still didn't understand. She still thought this was about money. She couldn't comprehend that it was about respect, dignity, and the difference between being loved and being used. That evening, I called David. "How are you feeling about everything, Aunt Margaret?" he asked. "David, for the first time in 3 years, I feel free. I spent so long trying to buy their love that I forgot love can't be bought, it can only be freely given. Do you miss them?" I thought about that question carefully. I miss the relationship I thought we had. I miss the children I thought they were. But I don't miss being taken advantage of. I don't miss being seen as a bank account instead of a person. What they did to you was wrong, Aunt Margaret, leaving you alone during surgery to spend your money. That's unforgivable. The Vegas trip was just the symptom, David. The disease was that they'd stopped seeing me as their mother and started seeing me as their inheritance. Vegas just showed me the truth about how they really felt. Today, 18 months after my surgery, I live a different life entirely. I have enough money to be comfortable, generous when I choose to be, and secure in my future. I have friends who check on me because they care, not because they want something. Linda and Bobby have learned to live within their means. Linda works more hours and rents out a room to help with expenses. Bobby takes the bus and shares an apartment with a roommate. They're both learning skills they should have developed years ago: personal responsibility and financial independence. Do I love my children? Of course I do. But I learned that loving someone doesn't mean enabling their worst behaviors. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is allow people to face the consequences of their choices. As for my inheritance, it's going to people and organizations that have earned it through care, not entitlement. David will use it wisely because he understands its value. The hospital will help future patients because they believe in service. The nursing scholarship will help young people who want to spend their lives caring for others. My children thought they were entitled to my life's work because they were born to me. But inheritance is a gift, not a right, and gifts should go to people who appreciate them. The best part is that I'm not angry anymore. I'm not hurt anymore. I'm free, I'm independent, and I'm surrounded by people who love me for who I am, not what I can give them. Sometimes the most generous thing you can do is stop being generous to people who take your generosity for granted. And sometimes the best inheritance you can leave your children is the lesson that respect and love can't be bought, only earned. So, that's my story. I'd love to hear what you think. Have you ever had family members take advantage of your generosity while treating you poorly? Let me know in the comments. And subscribe if you want to hear more stories like mine.